Everybody's back in the room.
I just want to inform you that I will be speaking in French, so if you don't understand French, please go get those, I don't know the name of it, headphones, yes. Okay, thank you. So,
good morning. Welcome to this 11th scientific conference on neuromuscular diseases. We're happy to see you numerous here at this symposium that was Canadian and bilingual before. It is a unique opportunity for health professionals, researchers, clinicians to share, to learn more about neuromuscular diseases. So it's a great honor for me to be part of it. I'll try to speak slowly. It's okay. The theme today is scientific advances to application from bench to bedside. When we started to organize the symposium with the committee, this theme came up very rapidly on the table. Things are going so fast these times with new treatments, new medications. So we wanted to couple those two solitudes, the labs, research, and implementation, application, clinical aspect. Besides all this, at Muscular Dystrophy Canada, we have knowledge translation in our priorities, and I should have asked the interpreters before. It's about passing on knowledge. We want to make available for our clients, for health professionals, all the information we can collect on research and science in a language they will understand. This met that priority of muscular dystrophy. We will explore this in the two-day presentations. Everybody says it's so hard to choose our presentations. Everything seems so interesting, and yes, I agree. Looks very interesting. And please relax. Just take it one conference at a time because everything is taped. It will be available on our website. The presenters will be recorded. I will take the opportunity to thank the organizing committee members or partners of health system, health professionals, experts in neuromuscular diseases. I will not name them all. You'll see their name in the program. I'll name only one because I forgot this name on the program. It's Sarah Turzon-Desilets. Sorry, Sarah. My great organizing committee, when I say great, they are truly great people. They designed the program from scratch. They got the speakers, they promoted the event, they got participants, and they were part of programming when with this type of conference title, it's difficult to condense everything in a two-day conference. They are here for presentations and also to moderate different conferences and solve all the emergencies I will have in the next 2 days. Thank you also to these people. This is the very first time I have the responsibility of organizing this symposium. I helped Pascal in the back. They were so patient. Most of them were women. They supported me. They shared their advices, experience, and positive energy. Thank you. I would like to thank our sponsors, Sanofi Janssen, a gold partner, and Biogen, PTC, and Kyogo, silver sponsors. Without your support, this event would not have been possible. Thank you. I want to thank people with the disease and their families for the information. This type of symposium is for health professionals, clinicians, and we opened up to the people with the disease and families. Thank you, and hope that you will enjoy the experience. I would like to thank the people of the mission, Muscular Dystrophy Canada, who came from other provinces. First days here were beautiful. They could walk around, discover the city. And sorry, dear colleagues, I was not very present during the last weeks or months, but you were very understanding. And I'll be back next week. I would like to recognize Stacy Lintern. She's a COO at Muscular Dystrophy Canada. She did everything to provide me the tools, times, trust, encouragement, and she did also part of my work. I didn't have time to cover everything, so thank you so much, Stacy. She will say a few words, and then we will have our opening conference. Just before the first conference, I'll be here and say a few words about the logistics. Have a good symposium. Thank you.
Welcome to the 11th edition of the Research Symposium, From Bench to Benchside, Scientific Advances to Application. Muscular Dystrophy Canada and valued partners have worked diligently in planning and preparing for this symposium over the last several months. As you may know, in the last couple of years, Muscular Dystrophy Canada, as a result of our 2017-2020 strategic plan, Pushing Beyond Possible, has and is still going through some major changes. We're changing for the better, though. Our mandate is clear from our board: more money for mission. In the last year, we've been able to make investments in enhancing our programs and services, resulting in reaching more people and having a greater impact. In addition, we are and have continued commitment to invest more into research. This edition of the symposium, for the first time, has been extended to healthcare professionals nationwide, bilingual, and all sessions are being recorded to be fully accessible for our partners and clients on our website. We continue to work, and this year our plan for the research portfolio is very exciting. Our plan includes additional investments with a focus on knowledge translation and enhanced funding for research activities nationwide. A key priority for Muscular Dystrophy Canada is moving our research portfolio forward and working in partnership with the research community, clinicians, clients, and corporate and industry. This year's symposium, we are extremely grateful for our partners. Without their support, the symposium would just not have been possible. We would like to thank the speakers who have many competing priorities, as we know, but have taken the time to assist in moving research outcomes to be applied and have a direct impact for our patients and our clients. We would like to thank the planning committee who helped guide our efforts, ensuring the symposium content was relevant and meaningful. We would like to thank our donors and sponsors. Without your support, we cannot move forward with our mission. You enable us to make a difference for this. We are extremely thankful. Lastly, thank you for all of you here today. Thank you for ensuring our clients have the best quality of care. Thank you for working in partnership with us. And together we can continue to make a difference for people affected by neuromuscular disorders. Thank you very much. I have the sincere pleasure of welcoming our next speaker, one of our valued sponsors for the symposium from Santa Fe Genzyme. And I'd like to welcome Michael Gottlieb, who is the Rare Disease Franchise Head of Canada. Thank you.
Okay, so this will be in English. I hope that's okay for most. Good morning. My name is Michael Gottlieb, and I have a little bit of a different background than most around here. I'm a chartered accountant, and some people say that makes me a little bit funny. If you didn't laugh, then there aren't any other accountants in the room. I also have an undergraduate genetics degree, which makes me even more different. I've worked in research labs for some fantastic scientists. I've worked in Canadian public health care, and one of my more interesting jobs was spending a $100 million CIHR grant to outsource 25,000 clinical mouse cages from 4 hospitals in Toronto. So I think this gives me a unique appreciation of the research process. I've also served on the boards of two charities as the board treasurer for Parkinson's Society Canada and the board chair for Spinal Cord Injury Ontario. I have a unique appreciation for your organization, Stacey, and I really do appreciate everything that Muscular Dystrophy Canada is doing for the community. Today, I'm the franchise head for the rare disease business in Canada at Sanofi Genzyme, and it's truly our pleasure to sponsor this conference today. Most of you today probably know that we have the treatment for Pompe disease, but I'm not here to speak about that. I really like working for Sanofi Genzyme because at the core, one of our key values is that when we do the right thing for patients, everything else will follow. And I know that's one of the key principles of Muscular Dystrophy Canada too. But let's be honest, pharma really does not have the best reputation in the market. My job, though, is to try and help as many patients as possible get a diagnosis and be in a position to help them with the right drug at the right time in their disease pathway. As an example, many of you are probably familiar with the University of Sherbrooke Next Generation Sequencing Panel. No? Anybody? One? Maybe one? Okay. So this has been a really interesting success story with Sanofi Genzyme. It started with a research project with Dr. Sebastian Levesque out of the University of Sherbrooke, and he's a metabolic geneticist. We knew that muscular dystrophy gene panels were scattered, they were difficult to access and not well organized, so we needed a patient-focused solution. There are far too many patients sitting in doctors' offices without a diagnosis, and that's not acceptable in 2018. Just because we don't have treatments for most of the dystrophies, it doesn't mean that patients should be kept in the dark. So in speaking with Muscular Dystrophy Canada, I know that we all agree patients should have answers and be in a position to benefit for those drugs when they become available. I heard yesterday's session on clinical trials was good for those who attended. I know we had a colleague speak there, and I thought, I hope we were well represented. If there's any questions, we can cover those later. Even if we look at the CNDR registry in Canada, there's an enormous cohort of patients who are followed in it without a proper diagnosis. So Dr. Levesque came to us with a solution to aggregate almost 100 genes in one next-generation sequencing panel, and we certainly wanted to support this made-in-Canada solution. Sanofi Genzyme continues to fund this project because it's simply the right thing to do. Patients deserve answers, and we are seeing great diagnostic yields across the country. As the head of the rare disease business, I really find it fascinating. I have the chance to meet so many inspiring patients, learn about their stories, and help them along their journey. The conversation is rarely about drugs, but most often it's just really someone to talk to about a medical appointment, insurance question, a clinical trial, and always about hope for the future. When I think about patients, I worry a lot about the ones who are suffering at home. Those who are suffering and have defined their normal as something that's not normal for most of us. Muscular dystrophy is like any other rare disease. It's silently progressive, increasingly debilitating, and often fatal. And our community needs to get in front of the disease pathway to help patients earlier in their prognosis. We need to intervene earlier. As an example, in Pompe disease, and I mentioned this to some this morning at breakfast, we've identified fewer than 6% of the patients, and I'm sure our epidemiology is not wrong. In fact, newborn screening in the US has muscular dystrophy at an incidence much higher than any of us expect. So the question and my challenge to the team here today is, why are these patients not presenting early, and how can we help our medical community recognize the disease symptoms earlier in the pathway? Because I'm sure the patients are not sitting in your office waiting to be diagnosed. One of the most interesting pieces of my job are the patient conversations, and I'm sure you've heard lots of patient stories. Every patient has a different story, but sometimes the stories really hit home for us. And I'll tell one. So the story starts with a young child around 4 years old and a phone call back to that child's mom. The child's mother received the phone call from the school principal with a very simple message. In kindergarten, the child couldn't run. And of course, the mother was really, really nervous. What does this mean? And the child went back and forth to various doctor's appointments without an answer. He was certainly falling behind his classmates. He was always the last person around the track and couldn't even do a sit-up. I think the pathway, if I recognize it correctly, it was from pediatrician to rheumatology, probably neurology as well, but no diagnosis was ever labeled. And ultimately, the child was identified as just not very good at sports and maybe a little bit lazy. The child continued to grow and was a pretty good achiever in school. He never really made it to the Tier 1 roster in the sports teams until one morning when the child is 12, waking up with debilitating headaches and unbearable dizziness. These symptoms continued to persist over 2 years, and the child missed 2 years of school, all of grade 6 and all of grade 7. He saw countless doctors in the US and Canada, and all without a resolution. After about 2 years, the dizziness subsided and the child returned to school, but he continued a rather dismal sports career, though there were a few sports injuries bringing the child back and forth in and out of physiotherapy offices. The child continued to grow and progress, now in his 30s, realized he just couldn't do what he used to do. Now with a young family and a few kids, he lost the strength to lift his children above his head. A foot drop developed, and he had a funny-looking shoulder profile, and wasn't able to lift his hands above his head. And eventually, this patient self-referred to a physiatrist, and then to a neuromuscular physician. And I'm sure you've heard lots of stories like this. And when you look back, some of that makes sense, and some of that fits into the muscular dystrophy pathway. But this one is different because it's my story, and I have FSHD. So when I speak to you as a pharmaceutical leader, I also speak as a patient and a father affected by several children with a more severe phenotype than me. And I tell the story because I'm also a rare disease patient, and I'm that rare disease patient hiding right in front of you. No one ever thought that Michael, a 6'4", relatively strong, articulate, intelligent person, could have muscular dystrophy, but the patients are out there, and we need to do a better job at helping them in their pathway. So growing up as a kid, my story really moves from hip weakness to respiratory insufficiency. That was the morning headaches. And now my symptoms of FSHD continue to progress, but I'm okay, right? My phenotype is fairly mild. My wife and I attended a conference in Rochester a few weeks ago with Dr. Rabi Tawil. He, I think, is one of the world experts in FSHD. And it was truly a humbling experience. While I walk in smiling and look relatively normal, there are patients with my exact same genetic sequence in wheelchairs and on ventilators. And that's the interesting component of muscular dystrophy. Why is it so different? And those are certainly research questions that we're out to ask. So all things considered, I'm doing pretty well. But when I speak about my story, I reflect on two things. Firstly, there's no such thing as late onset rare disease. The community talks about it a lot, but the symptoms are obvious at a very young age. As I mentioned, it's silently progressive, and we need to do a better job at identifying patients early. We need to look for the kids who can't do sit-ups because I know they're out there. Secondly, while my wife tells me that I'm completely out of touch with my own health, even though I work in industry, it took me over 30 years to get a diagnosis. And if I can't do it more quickly, what hope do the patients have who do not have the experience that we do? Now, I don't know if we have a target to identify patients early on in the symptoms, but I'm pretty sure 35 plus years is far too long. And this brings me to another point about our next generation sequencing panel that I spoke about earlier. And while I know it's the right thing to do, I'm sure that governments don't want us to find these patients. Sick patients who are at home, while a burden on their family, are not a visible burden to government. So it's up to each one of us to bring the rare disease patients out of the shadows. And yes, the drugs today are expensive, but the science being developed is equally complex, and our society values these solutions. As someone who's formerly worked in research labs, I'm actually quite disappointed and saddened by the research landscape today. And in my job, I have the special opportunity to meet with researchers and clinicians across the country. And it's a truly commendable mission. At each meeting, I can't help but think of a few things. Firstly, our country spends billions of dollars in research every year because it's the right thing to do. We value innovation, scientific exploration, and the opportunity to help sick people. Secondly, if the scientists are lucky enough to find something great, the chances that the product will be commercialized in Canada is nearly zero, and that's the unfortunate piece in our society today. And if we look at the drug access environment, there has been a recent change in the landscape. Governments have accused our industry of not contributing back to research. But last year, Sanofi spent over $131 million in research in Canada because it's the right thing to do. And we just announced a $550 million investment in Toronto to build a new vaccine plant. We do it because investment in the next generation of products is critically important, and we continue to refine our science and establish great new discoveries. As you probably know, the federal government is removing the United States and Switzerland from the comparative pricing basket for our products. And has a show of hands. Does anyone know about that, the PMPRB filing? A few. So in the past, we were allowed to price our products using the United States and Switzerland as reference companies, and those are being removed in favor of Australia and South Korea to be added in. So if we look at that drug basket, it will mean that we'll probably be looking at a 50 to 70% drop in drug pricing in Canada. And that bothers me as a patient waiting for a therapy. It bothers me as a pharmaceutical industry leader. Because in the past, we've benefited from clinical trials here, and companies brought clinical trials here because they knew they had a certain reimbursement pathway. We received early launches, clinical trials, but we won't be able to do that if we can't sell our products here. Canada's a great country, but if we can't sell our products here at less than 2% of the world market, we need to change the way we think. We need to hold on to our position by offering industry incentives, and I know Muscular Dystrophy Canada is a strong supporter of choice in the market, right? Patients should have choice, they should have access to opportunities. And if we can't get those here in Canada, it's unfortunate that I think pharmaceutical companies will look elsewhere for trials, and that's not what we want to do. I see us almost moving in the direction of New Zealand, and if you're familiar with the New Zealand drug pricing, it really is just a generic market where the country benefits and the patients benefit from older drugs. But what we want as a Canadian population is access to the new therapies. So I don't really have solutions to the drug access question as a pharmaceutical leader, but as a patient, I'm asking for your support and advocacy. I'm asking you to continue to work to innovate and work to continue helping your patients and mentoring the next generation of clinicians. I'm asking for innovation and for great ideas. And as a company, Sanofi Genzyme is open to this type of engagement, research, and any patient identification strategies because it's the right thing to do. So lastly, when I talk at these meetings, my final message is always, I don't want any other young boy or young child to wait 35 years for a diagnosis. Everyone deserves an answer, and everyone deserves treatment because it's simply the right thing to do. So, thank you.